Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with myself and Supermac, Malcolm MacDonald. Good evening.
Hiya, Steve. Good evening. Good evening to everybody.
Great to see you. No Gibbo this week. He's having a sabbatical. I think it's his last holiday of the year before the season starts again. So we'll wish him well. We hope he's having a nice time.
Yeah, we certainly do. I'm sure he is. He's getting married a little bit later this year.
Very good. Very good. Yeah. Good for Gibbo. Good for Gibbo. Yeah. He's a top man. We'll miss his.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll miss. She is a lovely lady, I have to say. He's a very lucky lad.
Very good. We're going to miss the Gibbo rant tonight, of course, which gives us a bit more time to chew the fat about Newcastle, and plenty to talk about as always, Malcolm. Let's start off with Matty Longstaff, first of all, because obviously your connections with North Shield, being the president up there, you know, you've been lucky enough to meet Matty, Sean and his dad and the family over the years, and we've talked about...
They're all North Shield's fanatical supporters, and I see them regularly. When they're not busy in their own careers, they come along and watch North Shields play, and it's lovely to see them.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about it on the show over the lockdown period as to will he or won't he. Well, the good news was he will. He's agreed to stay.
Yes.
2-year contracts, and Steve Bruce is beaming there because he's obviously managed to persuade him. I put it to people on the show the other day, Malcolm. Maybe it's got something to do with Watford getting relegated, and maybe he's playing in the Championship didn't suit him, because we all feel as if he was going to go to Udinese and then get loaned to Watford.
Sure. And Italian is not an easy language to learn. Maybe he's had a few lessons and gone, oh, blimey. This is a bit hard. It is not an easy language at all. You can't learn it in just sort of like 2 or 3 months. It takes an awful lot of time. I think that they've had to have a lot of talk, because he must have felt as if he had been quite let down. And so I think that. I think Steve Bruce has had to really sweet talk him round to it, and good, because it's all the better for Newcastle United, and I just hope that Matty, now that he has signed and that his immediate future is with Newcastle United, that he's given every opportunity to show his skills. You know, because he was sort of left out of things towards the latter part of last season.
Yeah, he was. Byrony, good evening. She says, what does Malcolm think about Bruce's recent comments about Gayle being in tip-top shape? And then he gets crocked again. And of course, I've been out and about today. I have seen Dwight Gayle actually, and he doesn't look in a great position, I've got to say, Malcolm. He's got a leg support on. He was limping badly, and he seemed to have some kind of screw in his leg, so it doesn't look good. It looks like a knee injury, I think, is what has been quoted in the press so far. Still, obviously, to be confirmed the severity of it, but we're desperate for strikers. It looks as if we could be without our informed striker, if you like, for the start of the season now.
Yeah, he got a few goals towards the end of the season, and I have faith in him. He looks a goal scorer. He looks as if he's constantly looking for that next chance to come his way, and I would be happy to go with him. I think that he needs a good partner alongside of him. And having had a great partnership with John Tudor, I had another one with Frank Stapleton at Arsenal. That if you get that partnership going, you can score bundles of goals, and you're each making goals for each other. And I think that Dwight Gayle is desperately needing a partner when he's fit, of course. And that's where I would have preferred to see Steve Bruce spend the majority of what's available to him, get the right partner, so that both are scoring, both are making goals for each other, and once that partnership it really comes alive. You watch what happens with the midfield; they come alive as well, And it's been a bit of a dead midfield through last season because nothing was happening ahead of them. To the point that the first half of the season, for heaven's sake, up until lockdown, there were two centre halves who were the top goal scorers.
Yeah.
And then when it all restarted, the central midfielder became the top goal scorer. And so for forwards not to even get into the running for the season's top goal scorer, absolute nonsense, and they should be thoroughly ashamed of themselves. I see that Steve has made a decision on Muto and that he's on his way. Good luck, Steve. See if you can find a club for him.
Yeah, that's the hard part, isn't it? It's the wages, Malcolm.
Yeah.
I mean, not necessarily the fact that maybe people don't want to buy these players because, they will fit in somewhere, but it's the astronomical wages they're on that often proves difficult to get rid of them.
Well, yes, it does, because also that other clubs, they'll look at the stats and they'll go, he's on that much, he scored 1 goal, or was it 2? Oh dear, can't remember. But then Mutu did that to me. And where are people going to see the value? What has he done on the field where they can see if they go back over the footage that he's appeared in? What has he done to encourage somebody to say, yeah, come on, let's give him a chance. Let's spend a right few quid on him, because he came in for what, 9.3 million? I can't see Newcastle getting even a third of that, probably not even a quarter. I should be very surprised if they do. Very surprised indeed.
One player coming in, of course, Jeff Hendricks. Took a while to get that over the line. It was a free transfer, Malcolm, but getting him at probably the peak of his career. He's done okay at Burnley. They consolidated the position in the Premier League, and he's 28. It's a free transfer. You'd probably say it's a good bit of business, and it depends what role he's going to play and who he's going to play alongside.
Well, yes, but the one thing that Burnley have, if nothing else, is a great work ethic. So that you've got a player who's going to come in, give it his all, because that's what he's proven to himself that works for him and for other players. A really good work ethic. Give it all you've got, and things happen for you. So I think he'll be a good character to come into the Newcastle side. He'll sort of send good vibes around the team.
Yeah, no, I would agree. We obviously played yesterday, Malcolm, as well, a 3-0 win. It's talking about the friendlies. It's very difficult during COVID to try and get any kind of, worthy friendly. It's a case of just blowing the cobwebs out. But we did win 3-0. Didn't concede any goals. Goals from Andy Carroll, of course. Fernandez keeping up last season's records of the back four, doing very well, and forgotten man, it has to be said, Christian Atsu as well, scoring. But yeah, as you said, good. First thing you said, Andy Carroll off the, finally gets the duck broken on his return, although it not in a competitive game. He's put the ball on the back of the net.
Yes, terrific, and I just hope that it sort of. I saw him getting frustrated with himself at the end of last season, and he really did need a goal. It's amazing the difference that scoring a goal can make. And I know that the pre-season friendlies, they're not the serious stuff, but nevertheless, goals are always important to a centre forward, and that will just give him that bit of confidence, give him a buzz. And hopefully, particularly with the two other forwards being out injured, that we can rely perhaps on Carroll to take the front spot, and that he's able to go 90 minutes and play a few games in a row, and that gives time then to others to get themselves fit.
Yeah,
I have to say, I didn't like the sound of what you were saying about Dwight Gayle, and what you witnessed. That sounds like it could be a long one, and there's been no statement from the club come out.
No, not at the moment. I think it looks what he's got on looks temporary, looks precautionary. And I'm no medical expert, but it just clearly didn't look right. And the fact that he was limping, struggling to walk on it, didn't fill me with confidence whatsoever. Yeah, a lot of people talking about, not sure whether they've been sacked, but Phil Thompson, Charlie Nicholas and Matt Le Tissier are all now looking for other work on a Saturday afternoon. Maybe it's a fact that Sky's been affected by COVID. I mean, nobody, no matter what job they're in, is going to get away with losing viewers, losing money, whatever it is. And maybe they're having to tighten the purse strings, Sky, a little bit.
I would think so. They're losing people from just about every area of all that they do, particularly in sports. So. It's been a damn good run that they've had, and it's been a very entertaining one. But I suppose all good things must come to an end at some point, and so it leaves Jeff Stelling with just the one to talk to.
Yeah. Mad Mark says it would be nice if we got a former Newcastle player on. Martin goes one step further. He says we should get me, you, and Gibbo on. Which, I wouldn't mind that. I'd take half the money that they're on. That would be very nice to sit in the studio.
I think though that we've got to remember that Jeff Stelling is a Hartlepool man and not a Newcastle man. I don't think he appreciates the Magpies too much.
No, definitely not. Local Hero says, Malcolm, have you ever been sent off? And if so, how many times?
Yep. I've been sent off twice.
Right.
Once for Newcastle, and it was in an Anglo-Italian competition. We were playing at St. James Park, and oh dear me, I can't remember who the team was, but Terry Hibbett, who was playing on our left, and their right winger, they sort of got into a bit of a spat, and they were sort of the two smallest players on the pitch, and that sort of and the ball had gone out for a throw-in, and I walked through the middle of them and sort of just pushed them away from each other, continued walking, got the ball, and turned around to take the throw in, and there was the referee getting his book out, and he sent me off. Mind, what you've got to remember is that in the Anglo-Italian Cup, that when you played at home, you had an Italian referee.
Yeah.
For the English clubs, and when you played away, you had an English referee. And so the referees would only do away games of their own nationality, sort of thing. So he sent me off, and all I'd done was just sort of push them away from each other, he saw fit to send me off. That was for Newcastle.
Yeah.
And I also got sent off for Arsenal, and that was against Coventry, and playing in their midfield was Terry Yorath. And what happened was that Liam Brady knocked the ball up to me, and I controlled it, and I laid it back off to Liam Brady. And he knocked it down to the corner flag for Graham Ricks to chase. And as I knocked it back Terry Yorath came in from behind and really did me. Long after, it was way after the ball had gone. And he had gone down, he used to go down on his haunches. And so I sort of tried not to go down on the ground, succeeded, turned, was a bit off balance, regained my balance. And as I started running back up the field towards the opposing goal, and Yorath was just sitting there, and I just came through and punched him. Now the ball was way down by the corner, and I thought, well, nobody will be watching. The one person who was watching was the referee. I said to him after the game, I said, what on earth are you doing watching me? What? He said, well, look, it was the way that Terry Yorath tackled you. He said, it was outrageous. He said, and I just thought you might do something. I said, well, why didn't you send him off as well? For such a dreadful tackle. So anyway, they were the couple of times, but yeah, and sadly, the awful thing for me personally was that the next game Arsenal were due to play was at St James Park against Newcastle. So I missed that game, and I travelled up and stayed and watched it from the director's box. But yeah, I missed the game.
A lot of people would have been wondering why you missed that, so now they know. Yeah. David Crone says, I've just watched yesterday's show. Great viewing as always. Thanks very much. That was our weekly show with Liam Kennedy. Very good, always very knowledgeable. Liam, give it a watch if you can. Quick question for Malcolm. We once played in an all-red kit. Can he tell me why, and was he playing?
All-red kit? Oh dear me. Do you know, there is something at the back of my mind ringing a little bell, and that we did once play in red and we didn't like it, but I cannot remember what game it was, what competition it was, because obviously black and white, we obviously weren't able to play in black and white. It wasn't as if in those days we would have an away colour. If we could play in black and white away from home, we would do so.
Yeah. Well, sure, somebody who's watching will give us that answer. Anybody knows?
I'd be interested to know.
I certainly don't. Peter Robson, I think, asked where I put Malcolm in the all-time Newcastle players. I never saw Malcolm play. I can only go off what I've seen, but Malcolm is certainly up there, isn't he? With Alan Shearer for me as a Newcastle player. He, he's great servant to the club, and I just have to read the comments each week that come in for Malcolm. I know how revered Malcolm is, and I've worked with Malcolm probably the best part of 20 years on the after dinner circuit, and done various charity events and gigs, and I just love hearing the stories. I've been very, very privileged to sit and ask Malcolm the same questions, best part of 20 years, and I never get sick of them. That tells you how much I respect Malcolm. So thanks for your question.
Thank you, Steve, and that was a nice comments. Thank you.
Joe Walker says, Supermac, realistically, who should we go for up top? I mean, obviously, we might need more than one now, but is there... Yeah. We are shopping in the bargain basement. Callum Wilson's been linked, Josh King's been linked, Troy Deeney, Chris Wood from Burnley. A lot of people going on about him. Who would you say out of the ones that have been linked we should go for? Who would suit the Newcastle style of play under Steve Bruce?
I think that I quite like the lad from Bournemouth, I have to say. Fella from Burnley, he can play a bit. It really is somebody. I've just got this vision in my head of Dwight Gayle playing alongside. He's never been given that real opportunity to forge a playing partnership with a fellow forward, and to create that relationship, and once you've done it, boy, you never lose it. It's a great thing. And John Tudor and I, whenever we meet up, we've got a huge amount going between us, and probably anybody else sitting witnessing it wouldn't understand what it was that we were talking about, because you create that understanding between you, and once it's there, you never lose it. And that's what Dwight Gayle needs to be given the opportunity to do. Now, the fella from Burnley that was mentioned, Chris Wood. I have to say, I love the ethic that there is within Burnley Football Club. The Sean Dyche, the manager, I know him, and I've had the wonderful opportunity just to sit, talk, discuss, listen, and he has a way about him, and he is no nonsense. And so if you get into Sean Dyche's side, you know that it's a 100% honest player who is going to give his all. If he wasn't, he wouldn't stand a chance with Sean. And so, yeah, the lad from Burnley, the lad from Bournemouth, and when it comes to spending, and also you mentioned Deeney.
Yeah.
The lad who's just left Watford, and he's been at Watford for donkey's years. I've got a lot of respect and admiration for Troy Deeney in what he's accomplished, and he's sort of gone up the leagues, through the divisions. I just think age is against him, but he's on a free, and perhaps if you said, well, let's get him in just on the short term, it could work. It really could, because I think he's quite an intelligent player. He's probably a better thinker than he is actually a player. That he can lack a little bit of what's necessary, but he makes up for that in the way that he goes about a game, his attitude, and he wants to give his all, and he's a confident lad, and so things will always go his way in a game. And yeah, but it's got to be somebody who has the experience and the success rate within the Premiership. I wouldn't want to start bringing in, like Muto failed miserably, and he came into the Premiership and it just wasn't for him. We can't take that chance anymore, particularly with the fact that bless him, poor old Steve Bruce, he's got peanuts to play with by comparison to others.
I don't even know if he's got that.
Well, maybe he hasn't. When you think about it, that Fulham Football Club, who have just got promoted, they've spent more than Steve Bruce is rumoured to have at his disposal.
Yeah.
So Newcastle United, they're in danger of getting left way behind with this takeover falling flat. So unfortunate. It could have been the real making of Newcastle United as one of Europe's top clubs.
Of course, if it does go through, Malcolm, we could be looking at Messi.
I don't think so. Somehow, if that were put to Steve Bruce, I would think he would scream, "Ah, no!" That Because wherever Messi goes,
Mhm.
it is all going to be about Messi. Not about the club, not about the team that he's with. It will be all about him. It's not necessarily him that makes it so, but the press will make it so.
Yeah.
All of them. The cameras will be following him 24 hours a day, every day of the year. And
into Greg's and into Phoenix and
all
to
of
the
it,
to the
all of
Metro
it.
Centre and
Yeah. And really, if Messi, if he's going to move, he's going to want to go to London or to Paris. He's not going to want to be in the northeast of England. Of that, I'm pretty sure.
no, playing alongside Joe Linton, I think, is enough to put anybody off, mate. To be honest, it's a pipe dream. It's a pipe dream. Martin Sutton, he's asking if we would have Kennedy back on loan. Linking him with Almiron and ASM in midfield would be great, creating chances for our new striker. A, we need a new striker, first of all. B, Kennedy didn't cover himself in glory last time he was here. Seemed to fall foul of Rafa. Bit of laziness in there. Didn't hit the heights he did when he first came in. What's your thoughts on Kennedy? Would you take him back? Loic Remy as well is another one I've seen mentioned. Loic Remy, who did quite well at Newcastle.
No, Kennedy, he didn't impress me that much. He's a player, but he's not prepared to really put it in. And so, no, not for me. Not for me. There were times when I felt that he could have put so much more in, and he didn't really fancy doing it. So, no, not for me at all.
Swag Dog's asking what we think of Newcastle's new signing, the £35 million signing of DW Sports. He thinks he'll take Joe Linton's number 9 shirt. Yeah, DW Sports, another purchase by Mike Ashley. He seems to like to buy them in the transfer window. Jonathan Ward says, Malcolm, if you're saying that Gayle needs a strike partner, are you suggesting we play 4-4-2? He says, and if that's the case, I think we'll get murdered in midfield because I don't think we can afford the luxury of 2 centre forwards. So interesting. What do you think?
I can understand, Steve, the point that he's making, but I'll go back to playing alongside John Tudor and myself. When you've got the 2 guys up front, they will hold up possession up front, and it gives loads of time for everybody to get pushed up, to get as far away from your own goal as possible. And if you remember last season, there were times when the defence would clear the ball, and before they could even get to the edge of the penalty area, the ball was coming straight back because nobody was holding it up. And that's vitally important that you have a couple of players up front who can just get possession and from a clearance and hold it on the halfway line and give everybody that chance and the time to push out and get reorganized in a much more forward position. And so also what the defence at Newcastle and the midfield, what they haven't had the luxury of is constantly going 1-0 ahead. That the forwards just have never changed the game.
Yeah.
To help the defence out, to help the midfield. So, their goals were so sparse that it was literally more like playing without forwards. And so once the ball got into the midfield, there was nothing further forward for it to happen. And so the midfield were having to take that responsibility. And how many times did we see midfielders dropping right back into the back four?
True.
And it was because there's nothing up there. Nothing up there whatsoever. And if it wasn't for wide men running the ball forward, then all it was just a punt, knowing it would come straight back again.
Yeah.
And so if you've got two guys up front who can hold the ball up, who can score goals fairly consistently, then it's always going to be taking the pressure off of the back four and the midfield, and it's going to give them a chance to go and enjoy the game. But you think about because Newcastle's goal scoring and the number that they conceded, it was quite horrendous last season.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg question. What comes first? The lack of goals up front, or the letting in of goals? And for me, it's the lack of goals up front. When you get a goal ahead, all of a sudden the team, they can play with a lot more confidence. They can push up. They can be more organised. They can knock the ball about a lot better. You know, you're in a much better position 1-0 up, and then you're even in a better position 2-0 up.
Yeah.
And then you really can go to town a bit. The forwards were never giving the defence and the midfield that luxury. Not ever. So all the time, the back four are in a bit of a panic situation because they know it's going to come back at them. And so they can't get pushed up, and they're getting pinned back on the goalkeeper's toes. They're not giving the space to the goalkeeper to come for anything that's knocked into the box. And everything starts to crumble. Everything starts to go wrong simply because the ball isn't being held up there and isn't being stuck into the opponent's net. To give you the time and the lead to go and consolidate. And so all the time it's pressure. And I wouldn't have enjoyed going out onto the pitch for a game as one of Newcastle's defenders. I wouldn't have enjoyed it at all because there was no outlet. There was no way out from just being under constant pressure. And that's why, you know, when you think that Dubravka, he made more saves than any other goalkeeper in the Premiership. That tells you everything, absolutely everything. And he was absolutely brilliant last season, you know. But when you're under that much pressure as he was, along with the back four, that mistakes start to happen because the pressure it's just constant, and it's grinding you down. And I think that all those guys at the back, including Dubravka, I thought they were absolutely terrific. I couldn't complain, even though there were times, oh dear me, they were driving me up the wall. But I couldn't complain about it because there was nothing up front. Not until that latter part of the season where they could start to knock it a little bit into the corners, and Dwight Gayle was back in the side and was flying after things, and was then getting the opposing defenders turned and facing their own goal.
Yeah, plenty of great questions coming in. We'll try and get through as many as we can. Quick answer to this one. If you had to pick one to start, Muto or Joe Linton?
I'd hand my resignation in first. If that was all I had to choose from, I would look at myself in the mirror and say, what a failure you are, allowing the situation to develop. I really would.
I'd pick Muto because I've had enough of Joe Linton. Tom Dixon says, Malcolm, do you think Andy Carroll should be given the number 9 shirt at Newcastle? I mean, we've had this debate about, is that shirt, you know, weighing heavily on Joe Linton's back?
Yeah.
You know, do we take it off him? Do we make? Yeah, I mean, I personally feel that shirt should be earned. I don't ever think it should be given away. I think it's not held in such high esteem or respect. But there again, the past hasn't been held in high esteem or respect in the last 13 years under this owner. So, for me, the number 9 shirt is sacrilege, and you've got to be the right kind of player to wear it.
You must be, but Andy Carroll is that right kind of player.
Yep.
When he's fit.
Yep.
And he wouldn't be weighed down in the slightest by having it on his back. Not in the slightest. In fact, it would do the reverse. It would really giving him a confidence boost, a real confidence boost. So yeah, to be honest, if I was Steve Bruce, I would take it away from Joe Linton and say, look, this is too much of a pressure for you, and give it to Andy Carroll, and play Dwight Gayle with an 8 on his back, and I think that would suit everybody. And you might, if Steve Bruce were to do that, you might get a bit more from Andy Carroll.
Yeah, I agree.
It's that mentality and creating that bit of confidence and self-belief in people.
Yeah, Mike Stewart says, are we worried about St. Maximin going? Do you think there's a chance of him being stolen by somebody else? And do you think we should have somebody in mind as a player to buy, if that does happen? I mean, those kind of deals can often come on the last day. That's the problem.
Yes, but the only way it can happen is because I'm sure that the last thing that Steve Bruce wants is to lose St. Maximin. St. Maximin will be an integral part of Steve's planning for this coming season. The one person who can spoil all of that is the owner. Because he will want to know all and any inquiries and offers that come in for any players. And if it comes in for St. Maximin, or maybe he's already said, look, if an offer comes in for 40 million, take it.
Yeah.
But he will want to know about it first. And of course, he always looks to up the price anyway. I think he would take over the negotiations. But hopefully, and I really do mean hopefully, that St. Maximin, he stays at Newcastle. He had a great season last year. He learnt a huge amount. You could see his game changing. You could see his mind working, and how he was improving all the while. The confidence was rising all the while, and hopefully all the marbles have fallen into place through the break that they've just had, and that he'll come out and he'll be even better because he's got the ability, he's got the pace, he's got the strength. He's got the fitness. He's got all of those assets to help him get better. And it's a great stage at Newcastle to really show yourself off. And if he were to go out there and keep improving, then who knows what his future is going to be.
Hereford replay in the red strip, Malcolm. That's what everyone's saying. You've probably pushed that away from your mind, to be honest. And I tell you what, I interviewed last week. I interviewed David Icke last week, Malcolm.
Oh, did you?
He was speaking very highly of you, and
I thought he only spoke of God.
No, he's speaking very highly of you because he was reserve goalkeeper for Hereford on at that time. Fred Potter was in goal for Hereford. But David Icke was sitting in the stand at St James's Park, and then ultimately in the replay. But he said he'd seen, he played against you before, and he'd also, seen you play. So he was speaking very highly of you, which was good. But
that's kind.
Yeah,
that's
it was It was an hour interview. We managed to talk 50 minutes about football, and then he veered off into what he's best known for. But it was a Newcastle United interview, and he has had a bit of involvement behind his, in media and playing against them. So it was good to speak to him anyway. But yeah, nice to hear his views. I want to ask your views on this, Malcolm. Jason Carter, what's your opinion on the Harry Maguire situation? Now, this is quite a fluid situation. I mean, obviously, he's arrested for a few misdemeanors. He's charged. He's pushed through the courts. He's found guilty. In amongst all that, Gareth Southgate has to pick an England team. He picks him, puts him into the team. He's then found guilty at court. So Gareth then withdraws him from the England team. Now, in the last 2 hours, he's now put an appeal in, which in Greek law means that the conviction is now squashed and he's now not convicted, and he now has the opportunity for a retrial, which will take place at a later date. So it's a bit bizarre. I mean, we've been down this road so many times with footballers, going out and doing stuff. My first thought was, thank the Lord it's not a Newcastle player. I've got to be honest, but yeah, it's never good, is it, when footballers get themselves into this kind of mess, Malcolm?
No. What I don't understand is, firstly, Maguire is reported to have said that he's a millionaire and that he could, put the whole matter right and what have you. He could afford to do that. Whether he said it or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But the fact is, he is a multi-millionaire. And he'll be even richer by the time he leaves Manchester United. What is he doing in a situation like that? I know that that he's come to the defence of his sister. Good for him on that. But why put yourself in that situation in the first place? For heaven's sake, you know what? Why aren't you on a private island somewhere where you're not going to meet the rowdies who want to cause a bit of, look, there's that Maguire fella, let's go and cause him a bit of trouble, and having had a few beers that they all think he's fair game. That's what happens. Why on earth were you in that situation, Mr. Maguire? It's crazy. Just keep out the way, enjoy a holiday, and don't get yourself into that situation publicly where these things can happen. Because, when you think that he is one hell of a big lad, so straight away the police, when they arrive, they're going to go to him, aren't they?
Yeah.
They would say, oh yeah, he must be there, and they'd want to get the story from him first. Now, there is a complication, and this I do feel for him, that police turned up, but they were in plain clothes. Well, how's he to know that? And certainly he wouldn't speak the lingo, so he wouldn't have realised that until perhaps it was too late, until other things had happened. So I feel for him in that way, but I just question any top footballer who is earning a fortune, why they allow themselves to be put into that situation in the first place. Get on a private island where there's no aggravation.
Yeah, good advice. I think, unfortunately, a little bit too late for Maguire. David Crone, I talked about this. We don't often speak about this, Malcolm. The programme back in the 70s, Superstars. You did very well on that, didn't you? If I remember rightly, it was it's something which people always tend to remember Kevin Keegan as well when he fell off his bike. But yeah, I mean, did you enjoy doing that kind of thing, Malcolm? And couldn't imagine it being done now, could you, with somebody like Jamie Vardy doing some kind of program? The legs are insured for millions, aren't they?
Of course, and the football clubs would never allow it. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a wonderful program to take part in. It was great camaraderie, and I just remember going to Malmö, which was the first one that I did, Malmö in Sweden, and I had the great joy to meet Angelo Nieto, who was the 250cc world champion, and his mate Agostini, who was the Italian world champion. He had been world champion 13 times, and he was a funny lad. You know, he was right down to earth. Maguire, take note. A really down to earth lad. There was a fellow called Willy Steveniers, a Belgian who played basketball in America, who was one of the top players in America. You know, you can imagine a Belgian going over and sort of wowing the crowds in the States of basketball, and so on and so forth. Now, the Keegan incident, that was down Aldershot way, near the army barracks, and there was myself, Mick Shannon, and Kevin Keegan, and of course we'd all played together in the England side on a number of occasions. And well, you know, Kevin, he could be a bit of a lad at times, and he rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. And we were stood, and we were watching Kevin, and he was looking to go round a bend, and a bike went away from him, and off he came, and he skidded along this asphalt track and took a load of skin off the outside of one of his legs, and he just lay there in quite considerable pain, and and one of the administrators there, he sort of looked over, and nobody moved. And Kevin was just there with nobody running towards him, and the fella said, "See, all Kevin's friends are rushing over there to help him." Then, oh, as an administrator, Kevin had rubbed up the wrong way.
Right. I wouldn't care. He never comes across that kind of person, but you know, each
but in certain circumstances, that he could.
He did.
Yeah, he could do, and yes, that was an interesting one. Was that I do remember in that competition that we had to fire a pistol in the shooting, and they used all different kinds of weapons, but on this it was and they said, right, there are very strict instructions that you have to put the gun barrel down on the table after firing, and then you lift it and fire at the next one, and then you come down. And I quite surprised myself, and I actually and I hit 9 balls out of 10 shots, and I was quite chuffed about that. I really was. It was all good fun, and after a very long day, we used to do all the events, but they were in a quite different order to what was shown on the television, and so we had to be very careful how we spoke when interviewed. You know, yes, because it all happened in a different order. Nobody quite knew whether you were up the top or down the bottom, or you know where you were placed in the 10 competitors, And so we had to be very careful. But then we get back to the restaurant, back to the hotel rather, have a bath and get into the private room that we had for dining. And it was just an absolutely fabulous, wonderful atmosphere. But there is a moment that I shall never forget in my life. And I saw a question just come up. Did I lift 100 kilos?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, in the clean and jerk. Well, it was actually there that I lifted 112.5 kilos. And that put me in the lead. The only thing was that there was Jeff Capes still yet to lift. And you could come into the competition whenever you wanted. And he just let all of us lift and fail, and then some would fail and they'd start to get knocked out until there was just me. And I lifted 112.5 kilos. Now, you had to lift a weight, and it was put against your own personal weight. Now, Jeff Capes weighed nearly double my weight.
Yeah.
And so, to beat me, he had to lift certainly more than about 250 kilos. And so, the message came out that, he's just given them their weight that he wants to lift. And it was, once his penalty weight was added to the 112.5 kilos that I had lifted, he then asked for all of that to be put on and another 10 kilos. So he was lifting somewhere in the region. He had to lift about 260 kilos. Yes, and that was 3 of me at the time with my weight. And so he came out and he walked over to the weights and one-handed bent down, picked it up, lifted it above his head, dropped it to the floor and walked out again. And I just looked, open mouth. I couldn't believe it. In fact, it wasn't just me that was open mouth. I think just about everybody in the hall was. Oh, quite incredible. Just one-handed. Lifted 3 of me above his head.
Superb. Barry's asking what your favourite event was, Malcolm.
Well, it was the 100 metre sprint, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. Set a record in Malmö of 10:4, and
wow.
I think it was bettered by a rugby league player, about 2 or 3, 4 years later. It really was a great competition, and they were lovely people. David Vine was always there, and the great athletics coach. Oh dear me, I bet everybody's screaming at their computers. What his name was? Lovely man, absolutely lovely, and everybody just got on really well in the main.
No, it sounds like it.
There was always the odd one. One of them, Brian Jacks. He just didn't want to mingle, didn't want to mix at all. The judo fighter, and he would sort of keep himself well away, and then just suddenly appear when he was required to do whatever it was. And as soon as he had done it, he'd just disappear again.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, it was all, each to their own, and it was an event that I absolutely loved. A little story about Giacomo Agostini, and for young people watching, do look up his record, because it's the most phenomenal record probably that any sportsman has ever had. 500cc motorbike racer. And in Malmo, I happened to win the event. And so there were monetary prizes, but at the same time, you always got a local something as your memento for this. Ron Pickering, thank you very much, Ian. Just seen that, yes, Ron Pickering, wonderful man. And so at the end of it all, I've won, but Giacomo Agostini has come last. And so they made a little presentation to him. And in Sweden, they have, as a speciality, particularly in the Malmö area, painted elephants. I tried to find out why elephants in Sweden, but nobody ever came up with an answer. But they're very brightly, gaily painted. They're sort of first painted in red, and then it's all coloured patterns all over the elephant. And so Agostini he's been given his check, and then he's given the local elephant, which was that big.
Yeah.
And so that's his. The next person has come up, and he's got his check, and he gets an elephant that's sort of that big and that big. And so each elephant got bigger as the prizes were dished out, until I was presented with my check, and this elephant, it was 2.5 feet long, it was 2 feet high, it was about 10 inches wide, and was so bloody heavy. I was struggling to it was just solid wood. And so anyway, the following day, we are, Agostini and I, we were walking together through the airport, and I'm sort of finding this elephant a bit of a struggle along with the case that I've got. And Agostini just turned to me and he said, in sport, he said, you have to be very careful and think all the time what your next move is going to be. He said, and why do you think I came last? He said, I didn't want to carry that bloody elephant through the airport.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant.
He was a lovely man, lovely, wonderful man.
A lot of people have enjoyed this. Dave Harrison's summing up what most people are saying. Absolutely great show tonight, listening to Malcolm reminiscing. He loved Superstars. Going to ask, Matthew, we'll overrun slightly because there's a couple of questions coming up. Me and Malcolm are both stopping in. So Matthew Coe says, Malcolm, what was it like playing in Sweden?
Yes, I was an Arsenal player, and I've been out injured for most of the season, and so do I still have the elephant? No, I lost it in one of my divorces. I think the elephant's complaining as well. Over in Sweden, I went there to really get myself fit through the summer, albeit I had a nasty situation with my knee, and the medical people weren't sure whether I was actually going to get back playing or not. And over there, I was playing for a side called Djurgården in Stockholm. They played at the Olympic Stadium for, I think it was the 1908 Olympics that were performed there. And so I said, right, to the manager, and the manager to start with was Alan Ball's dad, Alan Ball Senior. And so I said, Alan, so how do you want it playing? He said, well, they insist on playing 5 at the back. They insist on playing 4 in the middle. He said, and they're going to be in their own half. He said, and you've got to play in the other half all on your own. That was how he described what I was facing throughout the summer, and pretty much that was how it was.
Wow.
That they were very, very defensive, and so playing up front, it was a hard slog, a real hard slog, because I, in turn, being that one up front, I was playing against a back five with a mid four that didn't push up that much, and so it was boring stuff, I think, to watch. It wasn't all that exciting, but I did enjoy it, I have to say. Over there, they were very hospitable, I have to say, very hospitable. Looked after me exceedingly well. The countryside around, absolutely stunning. But Alan Ball Senior, who he could be a bit of a pessimist at times. When I said to him, "Oh, stunning countryside, absolutely beautiful," and he said, because I'd driven over, I'd gone across on a ferry to Malmö and then drove up to Sweden, and I said, "Oh, absolutely beautiful." He said, "Oh, you'll soon get sick and tired of that." I said, "Oh, I don't know whether you can ever get sick and tired of such wonderful scenery as that." He said, "Oh, you will." He said, he said, "It'll be, oh, there's a yellow house. Oh, there's a million trees. Oh, there's a lake. There's a million trees. There's a yellow house. There's a lake." And he said, and it's just so repetitive. He said, "You'll get bored with it." And of course, I didn't, because it was absolutely beautiful. But he was right. It sort of, that's how it went. You know, a million trees, a lake, a million trees, and a yellow house. And it was, all the houses were wood, and they were in one of three colours, and it was like a deep red, yellow, or a light grey. And there were no other colours allowed. Maybe that's changed now, but that's all I saw going through houses in those three colours, going right the way through Sweden.
Last few questions. Somebody asked, what does Malcolm think of Steve's beard?
Well, I thought it had slipped from on top.
We'll leave it there. Jasmine says, "Have you got any Steve Wraith books in your bookshelf?" I know for a fact he's got one, because I did a book called Race for the Premiership years ago, and Malcolm was kind enough to do the forward. So there's definitely one in there. You might have a couple. You might have a couple of crime books as well. The Geordie Connection, the craze.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Definitely signed as well. Definitely signed. So the answer is yes.
Yeah. And congratulations, you spelt the name right.
Keith Rule, we'll give him the last question because we're going to have to draw this to a close tonight. Keith says, "Malcolm, what did you think of Don Revy's Leeds United side? Would you have ever played for Leeds?" And I think I know the answer to this, but I'll let you answer it.
Right. Well, I'll answer the last bit first, and that was no, I would never have played for Leeds United. Leeds United, they were a closed shop, that they had all sort of come up as youngsters, or at least the vast majority of them, and it was almost like a large family, more than a football team, and the father, of course, was Don Revy, and all of the Leeds United players, they just couldn't say enough about Don Revy. They worshipped the ground that he walked on. But then I came across Don Revy when he became the England manager, and I and many other players in the England squad saw the other side to him and didn't like it one bit, not one bit. But you know, we're all different, and how he was, I suppose, in club football, you can be quite different to how you manage England, and I think that was the case. And I was very saddened and disappointed in the way that he left the England job. Just disappeared, just walked out and disappeared to the Middle East, the big bucks. And but the football that Leeds played, by heavens, they were really difficult to play against. Their football was quite outstanding. It really was. But the irony, I think, was that we would, in the main, get beat at Leeds. Although we never really got hammered, not like Southampton, they got beat, I think it was 8-0. But we would always win at St James Park. And it just seemed that it was a bit of a jinxed ground for Leeds United, St James Park. And I know that there was a history going back into the 3 or 4 years before I joined Newcastle, and things could get a bit physical and tasty. And John McNamee was one that the Leeds United players were somewhat frightened of, to say the least.
Yeah, good stuff. Great. Malcolm, as always, I could talk to you all night. I'm sure there's a lot of people saying we should do one just about that, and I think we more or less did it tonight. But yeah, I mean, I'm up for that, Malcolm. I know you will be as well.
Loads more.
we could do a Q&A one where we just don't talk about anything that's going on currently. So yeah, we'll definitely work on that, and we'll sort it out between us.
Steve, nothing is going on.
Well,
there's stories in the newspapers, but there's nothing really going on.
We're getting congratulated for not talking about the takeover, so that's fantastic. Which is or alleged takeovers, but yeah, it's great as always. And you know, we'll have John back from his sabbatical next week, so looking forward to welcoming him back. But yeah, we'll sort a special out, no problem with Malcolm. And to be honest, we could probably do a special on his own with Gibbo as well, because he's got some fantastic stories in his time.
He certainly has.
Covering not just football but boxing as well. He's been absolutely superb over the years, you know. But Malcolm, great to have you on, mate, and look forward to catching up with you next week.
All right, absolutely, Steve. Yes, and enjoy the rest of your week and the weekend. And I look forward to talking with you and coming back and talking with everybody. And thanks for your questions, everyone.
Thanks, Malcolm. Good night.
Good night.